The words escaped Cordelia Bramblewood's lips like a prayer torn from her soul as she pressed the deed to 300 acres into the Apache warrior's calloused hands. "I will give you my land, if you give me a son." Kestrel Windwalker stared at the desperate white woman kneeling before him in the moonlit clearing, her golden hair spilling over shoulders that shook with suppressed sobs. Around them, the Texas hill country stretched endlessly under stars that had witnessed stranger bargains, but none quite like this. "You speak madness, white woman," he said in perfect English, though his dark eyes never left her face. "Your people would hang us both." "My people already think I'm cursed," Cordelia whispered, clutching at his buckskin leggings. 5 years married to Ezekiel, 5 years of empty cradles and broken promises. The whole town of Willowbrook whispers that God has turned his face from me. Kestrel had been hunting when he'd heard her crying by the stream that bordered her property. He'd meant to pass by unseen, but something in her anguish had called to him, a sound he recognized from his own nightmares about the family he'd lost to cavalry bullets. "Stand up," he commanded gently, but she remained on her knees. "I've tried everything," she continued, her voice cracking. "Herbs from the medicine woman, prayers to every saint, even consulted that voodoo woman down in Austin. Nothing works but the Apache." Her eyes blazed with desperate hope. "Your people are fertile as the earth itself, strong children, survivors." Kestrel felt something twist in his chest. This broken woman had no idea that he too was childless, that his wife Sky Dancing had died in her 7th moon, taking their unborn son with her into the spirit world. "You know nothing of what you ask," he said, but his voice had lost its hardness. Cordelia finally rose, and in the moonlight he could see she was beautiful in the way of corn silk and morning dew, everything his desert-born wife had not been. "I know that my husband beats me when his whiskey runs high and his patience runs low. I know that without a child, he'll cast me aside for some young thing who can give him sons. And I know that you've been watching me for weeks." The last words hung between them like smoke from a sacred fire. Kestrel had indeed been watching, drawn by something he couldn't name to this woman who worked her land alone while her husband drank away their money in town. "The deed is worth more than any child," he said, testing her resolve. "Money means nothing when you're dying inside," she replied. "I'll deed you the land, give you papers that say you bought it legal. All I want in return is one night, and the chance that it might give me what I need most. And if there is no child, then at least I'll have tried something my husband never could." Her bitter laugh cut through the night air. "Ezekiel fires blanks, though he'd die before admitting it. Been with half the whores in 3 counties trying to prove otherwise." Kestrel studied the deed in the moonlight. 300 acres of prime grazing land, worth more than most men saw in a lifetime. But it wasn't the land that made him hesitate. It was the raw desperation in her eyes, so similar to what he'd felt when he'd held his dying wife. "One night," he said finally, "but not here. My people have a sacred place hidden in the canyons. If we do this thing, it must be done with proper ceremony." "Yes," she breathed, relief flooding her features. "Whatever you require. Tomorrow night, when the moon is dark, meet me at the old oak by the creek. Bring nothing but yourself and the courage to change both our destinies." As she nodded and turned to go, Kestrel caught her wrist. "White woman, Cordelia, you understand there can be no going back from this? Your God and mine will both judge us." She looked at him with eyes that held no fear, only fierce determination. "Then let them judge. I'd rather face damnation with hope than salvation without it." As she disappeared into the shadows, Kestrel touched the eagle feather in his hair and whispered a prayer to his ancestors. Tomorrow night would either damn them both or give them the redemption they desperately sought. In the distance, a wolf howled, and the sound seemed to carry the weight of prophecy. The hidden canyon lay 2 hours' hard ride from Willowbrook, a sacred place where Kestrel's grandmother had once communed with spirits, and his grandfather had carved ancient symbols into red stone walls. As moonless night settled over the land like a velvet shroud, he prepared the ceremonial space with sage smoke and offerings to the 4 directions. Cordelia arrived as promised, having escaped her husband's drunken snores and ridden through darkness on her mare. She wore a simple white dress that seemed to glow in the starlight, and her hair fell loose around her shoulders like spun gold. "I wasn't certain you'd come," Kestrel admitted, though he'd spent the entire day thinking of nothing else. "I gave you my word," she replied, dismounting with graceful determination. "And my deed." She held out the legal papers, properly notarized and witnessed. "Ezekiel thinks I sold the land to pay his gambling debts. By morning it will truly be yours." Kestrel accepted the papers but set them aside without looking. "This is not a business transaction, white woman. If we do this thing, it must be done with reverence for the spirits and the life we might create. Tell me what you need." He gestured to a natural basin carved from stone, now filled with warm water infused with sacred herbs. "My people believe that new life requires cleansing of the old. We must wash away our past sorrows before we can embrace future joy." Cordelia approached the basin without hesitation. "Will you help me?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications that went far beyond physical assistance. Kestrel felt his pulse quicken as he nodded, moving behind her to unlace the back of her dress with fingers that trembled despite his outward calm. "Your husband," he said quietly as the fabric fell away, revealing skin pale as moonlight on water. "Does he know of your plan?" "Ezekiel knows nothing beyond his bottle and his cards," she replied, stepping into the warm water. "He stopped truly seeing me years ago." Kestrel removed his own clothing with ceremonial deliberation, then joined her in the basin. The sacred water swirled around them as he began washing her shoulders with gentle strokes, murmuring prayers. "In Apache, what are you saying?" she whispered. "I ask the spirits to bless what we do here, to forgive us our desperate choices and smile upon any life that might come from them." His hands moved lower, and she shivered at his touch. "I tell them of your courage, coming to an enemy for what your own people cannot provide." "Are we enemies?" she asked, turning to face him in the narrow confines of the basin. Kestrel looked into her eyes, blue as summer sky, bright with unshed tears. "No," he said softly. "I think we are two souls seeking the same healing." She reached up to touch the scars on his chest, battle marks from countless raids and skirmishes. "You've lost someone too. My wife. Our unborn son. The cavalry came while I was hunting." His voice grew rough with old pain. "When I returned, there was nothing left but ashes and blood." "I'm sorry," she whispered, and her compassion undid something inside him that had been locked away since that terrible day. "I am sorry for your empty years," he replied. "Perhaps together we can fill the hollow places in our hearts." They finished the cleansing in reverent silence, then moved to the soft buffalo robes he'd prepared beneath the canyon's sheltering walls. Ancient petroglyphs watched over them as Kestrel lit a small fire and began chanting in his native tongue. "What happens now?" Cordelia asked, though she could feel the answer in the electricity that sparked between them. "Now we trust in the Great Spirit and the mystery of creation," he answered, moving to kneel beside her. "If you are certain this is your path." Instead of answering with words, she reached for him, and in that touch he felt a desperate hunger that matched his own. Not just for physical joining, but for connection, for hope, for the chance to create something beautiful from their shared pain. The fire crackled, and the stars wheeled overhead as they came together with a passion born of mutual need and unexpected tenderness. In the sacred canyon where his ancestors had once danced to ensure the tribe's fertility, Kestrel Windwalker and Cordelia Bramblewood wrote their own ritual of hope and healing, and when dawn painted the canyon walls red gold, they both knew that, whatever came next, this night had changed them forever. 3 months later, Cordelia pressed her hand to her still flat belly and allowed herself to hope. The morning sickness that had plagued her for the past week was unmistakable, and for the first time in years, she smiled as she prepared breakfast. Ezekiel Bramblewood stumbled into the kitchen, reeking of whiskey and cheap perfume from his latest visit to the saloon. "Coffee," he grunted, slumping into his chair without acknowledgement of his wife's presence. "Of course, dear," Cordelia replied, pouring the steaming liquid with hands that barely trembled. How different this morning felt from all the others. She carried a secret that blazed like a hidden star within her. "Strangest damned thing," Ezekiel muttered, gulping the coffee. "Jeremiah Stockton swears he's seen Apache sign on the North Ridge. Fresh tracks like they're scouting our herds." Cordelia's heart skipped, but she kept her voice steady. "Perhaps they're just passing through." "Better be. Times are changing since we got that new territorial governor. Talk of treaties and reservation land. Fool politicians don't understand that the only good engine is a dead engine." The words hit Cordelia like physical blows, but she forced herself to remain calm. Maybe peace would be better than constant fighting. Ezekiel's bloodshot eyes focused on her with sudden suspicion. "Since when do you have opinions about Indian policy?" "Since never, I suppose," she replied quickly, turning back to the stove. "I just tire of all the violence. Violence keeps us safe," he snarled. "Keeps them from thinking they can take what's ours." If only he knew, Cordelia thought, that she had already given away their most valuable possession willingly, joyfully, in exchange for the greatest gift of all. That afternoon, while Ezekiel rode to town for his daily drinking session, Cordelia walked to the old oak by the creek. She had been meeting Kestrel there every few days, though they had not touched since that night in the canyon. Instead, they talked about the child growing within her, about the increasing tensions between white settlers and Apache bands, about the impossible future they had created together. Today, she found him sitting beneath the ancient tree, whittling a small wooden figure with hands that moved with artistic precision. "A cradle horse," he explained, holding up the carved toy. "For the little one." "How did you know?" she breathed, though she had not yet spoken the words aloud. His dark eyes crinkled with gentle humor. "A man learns to read the signs. The way you hold yourself differently, the glow in your cheeks. My grandmother used to say a woman with child carries light like morning sun." Cordelia settled beside him, careful to maintain proper distance while drinking in his presence like a desert flower accepting rare rain. "What will happen when the child is born? People will ask questions. Let them ask. You will tell them your prayers were finally answered." Kestrel's fingers continued their careful work on the wooden horse. "The child will have your eyes, perhaps, or your husband's hair. Mixed blood does not always show itself immediately, and if it does, then we will face that challenge when it comes." He looked at her seriously. "Cordelia, there are things you must know. The territorial government is pressuring all Apache bands to move to reservations. My people grow restless, angry. Some speak of war." Fear clutched her heart. "What does that mean for us? For the baby? It means I may not be able to stay near Willowbrook much longer. My chief grows suspicious of my frequent absences. If he discovers I have been meeting with a white woman, he would kill you. Death would be a mercy compared to exile from the tribe. But I will not abandon you or our child, no matter the cost." Their conversation was interrupted by the thunder of approaching hooves. Both tensed, ready to flee in different directions, but the rider who emerged from the brush was not one of Ezekiel's friends or a territorial marshal. Instead, a young Apache warrior appeared, his face grave with urgent news. "Kestrel Windwalker," the warrior called in their native tongue. "You are summoned immediately. Chief Running Bear has discovered your secret meetings. He knows about the white woman." Cordelia didn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. "What is he saying?" she whispered. "I must go," Kestrel said, rising swiftly and tucking the wooden horse into her hands. "Keep this safe for our child. And Cordelia, whatever happens in the coming days, know that what we created together was sacred. No man can make it unholy." "Kestrel, wait," but he was already mounting his horse, following the messenger into the gathering dusk. Cordelia clutched the carved toy to her breast, feeling their fragile happiness crumble like autumn leaves in her fingers. That night, she lay awake listening to Ezekiel's drunken snores while touching her belly and whispering prayers to any god who might be listening. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, and the terrible possibility that the man who had given her everything might be lost forever. In the distance, drums began to beat, a sound that spoke of war councils and decisions that would reshape the very fabric of their world. Chief Running Bear's eyes burned like coals as he studied his finest warrior across the council fire. The other tribal elders sat in stern judgment, their weathered faces carved from granite in the flickering light. "Kestrel Windwalker," the chief intoned, his voice carrying the weight of ancient authority. "You have been seen consorting with the white enemy, speaking their tongue, meeting in secret places. This brings shame upon our people." Kestrel stood straight despite the accusations that could cost him his life. "I have done nothing to harm the tribe, my chief. Everything I have done serves a greater purpose. What purpose requires betraying your brothers for pale-skin comfort?" Snarled War Eagle, the chief's hot-headed nephew who had long coveted Kestrel's position as lead scout. "The purpose of ensuring our people's survival," Kestrel replied calmly. "The white soldiers grow stronger each season. Their settlements spread like grass fires. We can fight them, die gloriously, and watch our children become dust. Or we can find another path. The path of surrender," War Eagle spat. "The path of crawling like dogs to their reservation cages. The path of adaptation, of learning their ways so we might use their laws against them." Kestrel turned to address the full council. "The woman I have met owns much land that now belongs to me through legal purchase, land that could become sanctuary for our people when the cavalry comes." Chief Running Bear leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued despite his anger. "You possess white man's land papers?" "I do, my chief. 300 acres of good grazing with water rights and legal protection under their territorial laws. Land they cannot simply take because they desire it," the council murmured among themselves, recognizing the wisdom in such a strategy. But War Eagle would not be deterred from his accusations. "Pretty words cannot hide the truth," he declared, rising to pace around the fire. "This warrior has been seen touching the white woman with tenderness, not taking land with force. He couples with our enemy while our own women weep for dead husbands." "Enough!" Chief Running Bear raised his hand for silence. The decision would be his alone. "Kestrel Windwalker, if this land is truly ours, you will prove it by bringing the papers tomorrow, when Sunfather reaches his highest point. If you speak truth, you will be honored as a wise provider. If you lie—" "I understand, my chief. But know this, whatever bargain you made with the white woman ends now. You will have no further contact with her. The spirits have whispered that war comes with the changing seasons, and no Apache warrior can be seen as friend to our enemies." Kestrel bowed his head in apparent acceptance, but his heart raged against the impossibility of the situation. How could he abandon Cordelia when she carried his child? How could he honor his chief's command while protecting the woman who had trusted him with everything? The next morning brought news that made his dilemma even more complex. Young Spotted Hawk burst into the camp with reports that cavalry units were massing at Fort Henderson, 3 days' ride to the east. The army was preparing for a major offensive against all Apache bands in the territory. "They mean to drive us onto the reservation by force," Chief Running Bear announced grimly. "We have perhaps 1 moon before they move against us." As promised, Kestrel presented the land deed at noon, its official seals and signatures validating his claims. The council was impressed despite their suspicions, and Chief Running Bear formally declared the territory Apache property under white man's law. "This is wisdom," the chief acknowledged. "If war comes, this land can shelter our women and children while warriors fight. You have done well, Kestrel Windwalker." But War Eagle was not satisfied. "How do we know this white woman will honor such papers when soldiers come? How do we know she will not betray us to save her own pale skin?" "Because," Kestrel replied carefully, "she has as much to lose as we do if the soldiers discover our arrangement." That evening, despite his chief's prohibition, Kestrel slipped away to meet Cordelia at their usual place. He found her pacing frantically beneath the old oak, her face streaked with tears. "Thank God," she breathed when she saw him. I thought they might have killed you. Not yet, but the situation grows dangerous for us both. My chief knows about our meetings. Ezekiel suspects something too, she said, placing her hand protectively over her belly. He's been watching me closely, asking questions about my activities. And there's worse news. He's joined the territorial militia. They're planning to ride with the cavalry against Apache settlements. Kestrel felt cold dread settle in his stomach. If Ezekiel rode with the soldiers who attacked his people, there would be no forgiveness possible. No bridge between their two worlds. How long before the child comes? He asked. 6 months, perhaps 7, but Kestrel, what if— No, he interrupted, taking her hands in his. Do not speak of dark possibilities. Our child will be born healthy and strong, a bridge between our peoples when this madness ends. Will it end, or will it destroy us all? Before he could answer, they heard horses approaching through the darkness, multiple riders moving fast. Kestrel pushed Cordelia behind the oak's massive trunk, just as War Eagle and 3 other warriors burst into the clearing. So, War Eagle snarled in Apache, his weapons already drawn. The great Kestrel Windwalker proves he is truly a traitor, meeting with the enemy despite his chief's commands. Cordelia couldn't understand the words, but she recognized the tone of deadly accusation. The wooden horse Kestrel had carved fell from her trembling fingers, as she realized their secret was about to destroy them both. You followed me, Kestrel said calmly in Apache, though his hand moved slowly toward his knife. As any loyal warrior would follow a traitor, War Eagle replied, his 3 companions spreading out to surround their quarry. Chief Running Bear will be most interested to learn that his wise provider continues to betray the tribe. Behind the oak tree, Cordelia pressed herself against the bark, her heart hammering as she listened to the harsh exchange in a language she couldn't understand. But she recognized the menace in War Eagle's voice, the deadly intent that filled the clearing like smoke. There is no betrayal here, Kestrel insisted, though he knew his words carried little weight. I came only to ensure the white woman understands the terms of our land agreement. War Eagle's laugh was sharp as breaking stone. Terms? I see only a lovesick fool endangering his people for pale flesh. The insult hung in the air like a blade, demanding response. Kestrel's fingers tightened on his knife handle, but he forced himself to remain still. Violence here would accomplish nothing but Cordelia's death and his own disgrace. What do you want, War Eagle? Justice. Truth. The white woman will come with us to face Chief Running Bear's judgment. If she speaks honestly about your arrangement, perhaps you will be allowed to die as a warrior, rather than hang as a traitor. No. The word escaped Kestrel's lips like a prayer. No. War Eagle raised his rifle, aiming directly at Kestrel's chest. You refuse your chief's command? From behind the tree, Cordelia could hear the conversation escalating despite not understanding the words. But she recognized a standoff when she heard one, and she knew that Kestrel was willing to die rather than let them take her. The thought of his death because of her choice was unbearable. Stepping out from behind the oak, she raised her hands, peacefully, and spoke the only Apache words Kestrel had taught her. I come in peace. War Eagle's eyes widened in shock, both at her sudden appearance and her attempt at their language. She speaks Apache? A few words only, Kestrel replied quickly. Cordelia, you should not. I should not hide while you risk your life for me, she interrupted in English, then switched back to her broken Apache. I go. With you. To your chief. War Eagle studied this unexpected development with cunning eyes. A white woman who attempted to speak their tongue, who seemed willing to face tribal justice. This could be the very evidence he needed to destroy Kestrel's credibility forever. She comes, he decided, but you, traitor, will be bound as befits a prisoner. I am no prisoner, Kestrel replied evenly. I am Kestrel Windwalker, grandson of Spotted Elk, son of Thundercloud. I have earned the right to face judgment with honor. The standoff stretched like a bowstring until one of War Eagle's companions, a young warrior named Swift River, spoke up. War Eagle, perhaps we should return immediately to camp. Chief Running Bear waits for answers, and dawn approaches. It was a diplomatic suggestion that offered War Eagle a way to claim victory without immediate bloodshed. After a tense moment, he lowered his rifle and nodded curtly. The white woman rides with Swift River. You, Windwalker, will walk ahead of us where we can watch for treachery. As they prepared to depart, Cordelia managed to whisper urgently to Kestrel, "The baby, what if they discover—" "Say nothing," he murmured back. "Trust in the spirits and your own courage. Whatever happens, our child must be protected. Thee Sao." Journey to the Apache camp took 3 hours through winding canyon trails. Cordelia had never seen anything like the hidden village tucked into a natural amphitheater of red stone. Dozens of wickiups arranged around central fire pits, children and elders going about their daily tasks despite the pre-dawn hour. But as their small party entered the camp, all activity ceased. Every eye turned to stare at the white woman who rode among them, her blonde hair like a beacon in the torchlight. Chief Running Bear emerged from his lodge, his weathered face grave with the weight of leadership. He studied Cordelia for a long moment, before speaking to Kestrel in Apache. "So, my warrior, you bring your white woman before us. Does she understand what she has done?" "She understands that she made a bargain to save her land and ensure peace between our peoples," Kestrel replied carefully. "Peace?" War Eagle interjected. "While her husband rides with cavalry soldiers who seek to destroy us," the chief's eyes sharpened. "Is this true, white woman? Your man fights against the Apache?" Cordelia looked to Kestrel for translation, and when she understood the question, her face went pale. There was no point in lying. These people would discover the truth soon enough. "Yes," she whispered. "My husband has joined the territorial militia, but I do not support his choice. I want only peace." Chief Running Bear nodded slowly, recognizing the courage it took for her to speak honestly despite the danger to herself. "Then we shall see," he said in English, surprising everyone with his fluency. "Whether your desire for peace is stronger than your loyalty to your own people. The test will come sooner than any of us expected." As if summoned by his words, the sound of distant gunfire echoed through the canyons. Multiple rifles, coordinated volleys that could mean only one thing. The cavalry had found them. "To arms!" the chief shouted, and the peaceful village erupted into organized chaos as warriors scrambled for weapons and women gathered children for evacuation. In the confusion, Cordelia found herself forgotten by everyone except Kestrel, who appeared at her side with eyes blazing with desperate determination. "The test Chief Running Bear spoke of," he said grimly, "has begun." The cavalry charge thundered through the canyon like an avalanche of death, their rifles spitting fire in the pre-dawn darkness. At their head rode Captain Harrison Steele, a glory-hungry officer who had promised his superiors the complete elimination of Chief Running Bear's band. And among the territorial militia volunteers spurring their horses alongside the professional soldiers was Ezekiel Bramblewood, his whiskey-clouded eyes bright with bloodlust and the promise of Apache scalp bounties. In the Apache camp, organized retreat began immediately. Warriors laid down covering fire, while women and children fled toward hidden trails that led deeper into the canyon system. But Chief Running Bear knew this defensive position could not hold for long against superior numbers and firepower. "Kestrel, Windwalker," he shouted over the sound of gunfire. "Take the white woman and go. If she falls here, all hope of peace dies with her." Kestrel grabbed Cordelia's arm, but she pulled away, staring in horror at the attacking force. "My husband," she whispered. "Ezekiel is with them." Through the chaos and gun smoke, she had spotted his familiar slouched posture on horseback, his old Confederate cavalry saber gleaming in his hand. The man who had failed to give her children was now trying to destroy the father of the child she carried. "He cannot see you here," Kestrel said urgently. "Come, we must reach the escape trails." But Cordelia stood frozen, torn between two loyalties, two worlds, two different versions of herself. The woman who had married Ezekiel for respectability and security warred with the woman who had given herself to an Apache warrior for hope and love. The decision was made for her when a stray bullet sparked off the rocks near her feet. Kestrel swept her up in his arms and ran toward the back of the camp, where Swift River was helping evacuate the wounded. "This way," Swift River called, pointing to a narrow cleft in the canyon wall. "The passage leads to the sacred caves." As they climbed through the rocky passage, Cordelia looked back to see War Eagle making a final stand near the central fire pit, his rifle taking deadly toll among the advancing cavalry. His courage was magnificent, even if his hatred had nearly destroyed her and Kestrel. "Will he survive?" she asked. "War Eagle chooses his own path," Kestrel replied grimly, "as we all must." The sacred caves were a maze of interconnected chambers carved by centuries of patient water. Here, the Apache women and children huddled in silence while their warriors fought and died in the canyon below. Cordelia found herself caring for wounded warriors, her gentle hands as welcome as those of any Apache woman. "She has healer's touch," observed Running Deer, the chief's elderly sister. "Perhaps the spirits sent her to us for this purpose." But as the hours passed and the gunfire gradually died away, it became clear that Captain Steele's assault had been devastatingly successful. Of the 40 warriors who had defended the camp, fewer than 20 had escaped to the caves. Chief Running Bear arrived at sunset, his left arm hanging useless from a cavalry saber wound. His eyes sought out Kestrel immediately. "The village is destroyed," he reported wearily. 17 dead, including War Eagle. He died well, taking 3 soldiers with him. "And the survivors?" Kestrel asked. "Scattered. Some fled south toward Mexico, others north to join Cochise's band. We cannot remain here. Steele will bring reinforcements and search every cave in the territory." Cordelia stepped forward, her heart breaking for these proud people who had lost everything because of white man's greed. "Chief Running Bear, the land deed Kestrel showed you. It's real. It's legal. You could take your people there. Claim sanctuary under territorial law." The old chief studied her with eyes that had seen too much death and betrayal. "And when your husband comes with more soldiers? When they demand we surrender?" "Then I will stand with you," Cordelia replied firmly. "I will testify that you are peaceful settlers, not hostiles. I will use whatever influence I have to protect your people, even against your own husband." The question hung in the air like incense from a funeral pyre. Cordelia placed her hand over her belly, feeling the flutter of life within. Kestrel's child, the bridge between 2 worlds that now seemed destined for war. "My husband stopped being my true husband long ago," she said quietly. "My loyalty belongs to the father of my child and the people who have shown me more kindness than my own kind ever did." Chief Running Bear nodded slowly, making his decision. "Then we will try this path of peace, though I fear it leads only to a different kind of destruction. Kestrel Windwalker, you will take 10 warriors and establish our claim to this legal land. The rest of us will follow within a moon's time." "And the white woman?" Swift River asked. "She comes with us, of course. If she truly chooses our path over her own people, then she must walk it to its end, whatever that may be." As night fell over the sacred caves, Cordelia found herself committed to a course that would either save both their peoples or destroy them all. In the distance, coyotes howled their ancient songs of loss and transformation, and she wondered if the child growing within her would inherit a world of war or peace. The choice, she realized, lay as much in her hands as in anyone's. 3 weeks. Later, Cordelia stood on the porch of what had once been her marital home, watching Kestrel and his warriors establish the legal Apache settlement. The transformation was remarkable. Where once had been simple ranch buildings, there now stood traditional wickiups alongside practical cabins, creating a unique blend of 2 cultures learning to coexist. "The papers are in order," announced Territorial Judge Cornelius Blackthorne, a fair-minded man who had ridden out from Austin to verify the unprecedented land claim. "According to federal law, this property belongs to these Apache residents through legal purchase. Any attempt to remove them by force would constitute unlawful seizure." Sheriff Dockery nodded grudgingly, though his hand remained near his gun. "Don't make it right, Judge. White woman living among savages, claiming to be married to one of them. Mrs. Cordelia Windwalker," the judge emphasized, holding up the marriage certificate Kestrel and Cordelia had obtained through a sympathetic minister in Austin, "has every right to live where she chooses with her lawfully wedded husband." The name change had been Cordelia's idea, a complete break from her past life and a public commitment to her new path. The Apache women had welcomed her with traditional ceremonies, and she now wore her blonde hair in braids adorned with turquoise beads. But the greatest test was yet to come. The sound of approaching horses announced the arrival they had all been dreading. Ezekiel Bramblewood rode up with a dozen militiamen, his face purple with rage and humiliation. The whole territory was talking about his wife's scandalous defection, and the whiskey hadn't dulled the sting of public mockery. "Cordelia," he bellowed, dismounting with drunken clumsiness, "you get out here right now. This foolishness has gone far enough." She emerged from the cabin calmly, her hand resting protectively on her now visible belly. At 6 months, there could be no hiding her condition, and Ezekiel's eyes went wide with shock and fury. You're with child," he stammered. "I am," she replied evenly. "Something that never happened in our marriage bed." The implications hit him like a physical blow. You whore! You lay with this savage and dare—" His words were cut short as Kestrel appeared beside his wife, his presence radiating quiet menace. "You will speak respectfully to my wife, or you will not speak at all." "Your wife?" Ezekiel's voice cracked with hysteria. "She's my wife, legally married in the church." Judge Blackthorne cleared his throat. "Actually, Mr. Bramblewood, your wife, filed for divorce on grounds of abandonment and cruelty. The decree was finalized last week. Mrs. Windwalker is free to marry whomever she chooses."